welcome to this week's book club episode of Star Wars Aftermath Empire's End. If you are not familiar with the series, you can go ahead and click here and it'll take you back to the beginning where we've gone through this book a couple of chapters at a time to dig into the themes and implications and other such goodies in this book. But if you really don't know what's going on, I actually highly recommend you click here and it will take you back to the playlist for the first book. This is a third book in a trilogy, and it might make more sense for you to join us back with the first book, especially because now we are very close to the end. We're going to have this week and next week, and then we're going to be done with the Aftermath trilogy over a year later. It's been quite a journey, but for today, we're going to discuss chapters 35 and 36. And 35 is much longer than 36. And 35 is... it's where a lot of the stuff happens. I loved the first line of the chapter. This is the observatory. Very simple, very basic, but it's the point, right? This is the observatory. We've been hearing about it since Life Debt even, I think. It's been this big mystery. It's been this thing everybody's been fighting over, and now we're here. We're at the observatory. We learned that there are many observatories across the galaxy, and they all hold different purposes. One such observatory was seen in the Battlefront 2 storyline, which is, again, where I've mentioned that you might be familiar with some of the events in this book if you've played that game. So this is an observatory in the same line of that story, if you are familiar with it. This is specifically an observatory that deals with the contingency. So the observatory that was seen in Battlefront 2 does not necessarily deal with the contingency in the same way that this one does. Another kind of cool connection is they talk about a ship that was stolen by a gambler right in the beginning, the Imperialist. That's actually from the Lando miniseries, which is a great miniseries that I highly, highly recommend. That was just kind of a cool Easter egg type moment. Another cool Easter egg moment is Thrawn. We get Thrawn mentioned by name. It is around the time of this book that Thrawn is coming back into canon through the Timothy Zahn trilogy, which was not a trilogy at the time, and through Star Wars Rebels. So to see a specific connection like that was really cool, especially because if you know Thrawn's legend story, and really it's similar to what we see in current canon in the novels. Thrawn is all about the unknown regions, is all about mapping, charting, and doing all of these new things. So it was another kind of cool shout out. Within the records, too, that Rax is thinking about, there's specific mention to the Old Republic and the Sith Empire, which is time periods, basically eras, bodies of government that existed in Legends. Seeing these names listed obviously canonizes them into this current universe, though I'm not sure that they exist in the same way that they do in Legends because they have not really been talked about. But Wendig has been doing all sorts of references to things in that time period throughout these books, and this was yet another one. But Easter eggs aside, this is it. This is the contingency. This is what was foreshadowed when Palpatine was teaching Rax how to play space chess. This is the destruction. We now know that the whole point of everything was for Rax to bring up the stragglers of the fallen Empire and see them destroyed for failing the Emperor, and to take as much of the New Republic down with them. So basically you have the entirety of the Empire, such as it is, most of the New Republic, all on Jakku, and now the observatory exists to destroy the planet of Jakku and take both bodies, both sides of the war with it. So this is what it's all been building to, and this is part of what I like about the trilogy so much, is you spend all this time in these three books. In Aftermath Prime with Sloane, you see that she wants to rebuild the Empire, but all throughout Life Debt and through most of Empire's End, you're like, what is Rax doing? It's, even going to the events of the first Aftermath book, being a part of his plan and having acted according to his plan, even though it was a disaster. It's what is going on, and it's because there really was no plan to rebuild the Empire through this group of people. There is a plan to rebuild the Empire. We see Rax talking to Daddy Hux, and Daddy Hux getting sent into a ship for him to leave and go start this new empire. But it's not built from the ashes of the old one. It's going to be something completely new. What's interesting in Rax's relationship with Palpatine is Rax has an undeniable respect, an undeniable almost worship sense towards Palpatine and believes in Palpatine's powers and believes in his Force powers, but he doesn't believe in the Force the same way that Tashu does. He doesn't believe that the Force is controlling the galaxy. He just sees it as a power that the Emperor had. So here it's kind of interesting to see how he both wants to execute the Emperor's will, that he exists for the Emperor's will, but that he also is very different from the Emperor, and kind of had this cherry-picked idea of, well, this part's right and this part's not right, and this part's right, but I don't like this part, but I like this part. It's interesting to see that in how Rax has stayed kind of true to Palpatine and Palpatine's plan, while at the same time doubting parts of Palpatine, which makes Rax seem like, I mean, just a much more nuanced character than somebody like Tashu, who just blindly follows, and blindly follows to the point that he gets gollumed right into the Mount Doom of Jakku. Tashu gets dropped wearing all of these Force artifacts, and the power contained within the Force artifacts is what starts the chain reaction in the planet's core, down the giant straw tunnel all the way down this secret tunnel through the whole planet's crust to the core. The whole thing starts, and the planet is being destroyed by both physical and dark side energies in some ways, and things are about to get pretty crazy. But then we jump over to Nora, Sloane, and Brenton. Brenton has a more engineering kind of background-based mind, so he's able to kind of see what's going on in the computer screens, which he doesn't really know how to use, but he can read them well enough to understand that the planet is destroying itself. So now they need to stop the planet from destroying itself, and at some level we know how this goes because we've seen the planet of Jakku in The Force Awakens, so obviously the planet did not completely blow itself up. So we're not left to wonder the outcome of this particular element of the book, but we are left to wonder how and why. Within this passage, we see that Nora still doesn't trust Brenton. I can't say that I really blame her. The last time, she talked to him, he was mind controlled. He's hanging out with, her worst enemy. She's very confused, and for all the grief that I give Nora, I can't really blame her in this situation. Brenton gets to work to trying to stop the planet from self-destructing, and Sloane goes to look for Rax. She sends Sloane off without a blaster because she doesn't trust Sloane not to just turn around and shoot them and then go after Rax. So basically Nora is in kind of this weird spot where she has to figure out, does this Rax person even exist? Because she hasn't really seen a whole lot about that. How much does she want to help Sloane? Nora seems to think that if they just stop the planet from blowing up, everything will be fine. She has Sloane. If Rax is out there, she can handle it. So Nora is kind of struggling to see the bigger picture because there's too much stress going on around her. That's the part where she tends to go back into the realm of frustrating me, because it's like, Rax is a big deal. I get you don't know that, but if you don't want to give Sloane the gun, go find Rax yourself. Which she does ultimately end up doing. But Sloane goes on her own. She finds Rax, and this is kind of the big confrontation. Sloane and Rax get into a physical fight. Sloane miscalculates. She thinks that she can just take him out. Of course, Rax is an incredible fighter because he grew up a scrappy orphan on Jakku. And when Sloane's not looking, Rax just takes her down. He uses the space chess pieces that he picked up earlier in the chapter that Palpatine had left behind for him as a piece of meaning. Rax basically breaks Sloane's fingers one by one, trying to get screams out of her, reactions out of her, because he knows that she didn't come by herself. It's her screams that cause Nora and Brenton to kind of argue again, and for Nora to explain that she doesn't trust what's going on right now. As Nora and Brenton talk, Brenton is trying to apologize. He's trying to have the, hey, let's have the talk that you need to have after one goes under the control of a mind chip and almost kills the entirety of the New Republic with your wife that you haven't seen for years because you've been in an Imperial prison. He's trying to have that talk, and Nora doesn't want to have it because she wants to focus on what's going on right now, and Brenton's like, what if we only have right now? And then Nora hears Sloane's screams, and ultimately she decides to go help Sloane, trusting that Brenton is Brenton and he can be left alone with the computer, and be trusted to fix the integrity of the planet even though it is continuing to fail. Nora so badly wants everything to be black and white. She so badly wants it to be that Sloane is the bad guy that she's always thought Sloane was, and that Sloane is the ultimate, is the endgame. If they get Sloane, the war's over, and they're done. In the same way the Jedi wanted taking out General Grievous to be the end of the war in Revenge of the Sith, and it just simply wasn't. Like, that's where Nora is at right now, and she wants that so badly, and she just wants it to make sense, and nothing's making sense, and everything is so complicated. And it's largely complicated because she was jumping to a lot of conclusions over the last 3 books. Granted, there are understandable conclusions to jump to, but they were wrong, though understandable, and so now she is kind of finding herself in a difficult position. She goes to help Sloane, and Rax's trap is laid. He gets the jump on Nora. Nora and Rax get into a struggle. Nora is bested by Rax, and then Brenton shows up. Brenton and Rax get into a scuffle. They struggle. At this point, Rax has Nora's blaster because, of course, he does. Because of course, Nora is so adamant about hanging on to the blaster, not giving it to anyone else, and then she drops it because she's Nora. And Rax gets the jump on Brenton and shoots Brenton, and he goes down. And then Nora gets up and struggles and tries to take Rax down, and she manages to shoot him, but it doesn't fully injure him. And then Rax runs off, and at this point Sloane is up, she's moving, and Nora is so injured that she's falling into unconsciousness, and the last thing she can do is pass the blaster to Sloane, who then runs off to chase after Rax. There's a lot going on here. Brenton was right. They didn't have a lot of time to have that discussion. Nora really, I just feel like she spends this whole trilogy just getting punished over and over and over again. You know, she was so bent on revenge, and then she finally kind of fell away from revenge a little bit for the sake of rescuing her husband, gets her husband back, can't trust her husband, and then doesn't want to talk to him and shuts him out, and then now he's dead because he saved her life. And this is a thing she gets to deal with now. And in the end, she had to trust Sloane, because it was Sloane or the man that just killed her husband. And all the while she's passing out, and she has no idea if Brenton fixed the planet before he came in to help her, or did he sacrifice the whole planet to come get her, and now they're both dead and the planet's gonna go anyway. These are things that are not fully explained. Sloane is running after Rax to get to the ship, where Rax has Daddy Hux waiting for him, and it's this moment, right? All of our characters collided. You had Brenton, you had Nora, you had Sloane, and you had Rax all in the same room, all in this conflict of people having, you have the broken trust between Sloane and Rax, and you have broken trust between Nora and Brenton that shouldn't have been broken, and you have this new trust between Brenton and Sloane, and then Nora having to trust Sloane, and it's this big nexus point of all of these relationships that we've been seeing over the course of the books, and we're left with 2 of our heroes on the ground, and our villain and our anti-hero are the ones that are left, and they're moving to their own end of the conflict, which we will get to next week. It was a lot, and it's something that Nora is going to have to deal with, I suppose. And then we get to chapter 36. 36 is really short. So last week we discussed the attempt on Mon Mothma's life, and I said that I wasn't going to spoil it for you, but I had no memory whatsoever of that plot line, so that should tell you a lot about how important it was. Here we get to the Senate building, and we see that Singer and Leia are both very worried about Mon Mothma, as they would be, and then it turns out Mon Mothma's not dead, because she wasn't even in the building, because she went shopping. Which on the one hand it's good, it's solid, it's great. Like, it was set up that she wasn't going to be there because she felt bad, because Singer said you can't buy your own gift, and in a weird sort of way it ties in to the interlude with Lando, when Lando couldn't figure out what gift to get Leia for baby Ben, and like there's all of these connecting themes, and there's a lot of relief because Mon Mothma's not dead, and like I'm sure when I read this the first time I was a little bit more invested in whether or not Mon Mothma was alive or not. At this point in time we didn't really have anything after it where I legitimately didn't know, but like I want to be on Jakku. Like, I want to be on Jakku, and I want to know what's going on Jakku, and like I get that this was like 3 pages, man, but it was 3 pages that were not on Jakku.
Back to Jakku! Why does everyone want to go back to Jakku?
My biggest qualm with these books is often the pacing is a little weird. There's points where the pacing is stellar, and then this is one of those points where I'm like, get this plot line. It's fine. It was just a couple of chapters long, and it would really be no different than something being interrupted by an interlude, and like I should just not be as bothered by it, but I'm like,
I gotta get back to Jack.
The real point, the real big part of this is the real reason to take us away from Jakku, and the reason why I am more okay with it than not, maybe not for the plot line, but we hear from Masameda, and we haven't heard from Masameda in a long time, and he wants to finally surrender the Empire. The last time we saw Masameda, he was in the hands of the Ankle Biter Brigade, and that whole plot line happened, and we just have not gone back to him for a while. When was Ankle Biter? Yeah, that was in Interlude 5, so that was a while ago. So that's just been kind of dangling to the point where I completely forgot about it, and then that came back. So this chapter was fine just because it served that purpose. But that's what I have to say about this week. For next week, finish the book! Finish the trilogy! That's going to be chapters 37, 38, and the epilogue. But easier just to say, finish the book. And then, the week after that, we'll be starting this nice little book here. We'll be starting Bloodline. So again, if you're watching along and you want to join us for the next one, I don't think we'll take a week off. I think we'll jump right into it. I'm going to take some time, look through the book, see how long it will presumably take us so we can have it done in time for the Rise of Skywalker. But yeah, that's where we're heading for in the future. Please leave me a comment telling me what you think. Maybe you weren't bothered by the pacing of it at all. I think it just hit me harder because we're reading this like 1 week at a time that I got to that chapter. I'm like, now I gotta wait a whole week to find out what happens on Jakku. I mean, I could just read the book, but it was the principle of the thing. But like, did the pacing bother you? Does the pacing not bother you? It's totally fine if it doesn't bother you. I'm always up to see how different people interpreted the book and see what was enjoyed, what was not. If you're not already, please follow us on all of the socials. I'd love to talk to you guys any chance I can get, and I will talk to you guys next week.